So today I want to talk to you about how to calculate yardage of hand spun. And actually it works for anything that you don't know the yardage of. For instance, if you like to recycle yarn from either your previous projects that you decided you didn't like, or if you like to go to the thrift shop and find sweaters that you can rip out and recycle the yarn, then this will give you a way to be able to determine approximately how much yardage you have of the yarn. And it mostly works well for spinners after they have spun their yarn from fiber. So I'm going to demonstrate just with some general yarn that I have here because it's just quick and easy. And I'm going to demonstrate with a little small knitty knotty. This is a small knitty knotty. Usually they're much larger, and you don't have to have anything fancy or expensive. Oh, my ball is running away. You can use PVC piping. Steve made this knitty knotty for me, and actually for everybody who came to the very first Knittopia. This was in everybody's goodie bag. I think he was able to make these knitty knotties for under $2 a piece. It's very simple. It's just some PVC piping with some tea, whatever these are. And you need to make them so that they're loose so you can spin this, because if you can't glue these pieces. These pieces have to be separate so that you can spin it. But these handles here, these he's got glued in there. Those aren't moving anywhere. It's just the long piece. And plus, this makes it easy. So if I want to change the length of my skein, I can do that. So those pieces, I think he did have some sticky stuff just to make it a little grippy, because when I first get started on my skein, it's sometimes a little difficult because it falls apart. But I have two of these. I have one that's slightly smaller and one that's a little bit bigger. I think one that's about a yard and a half and one that's about 2 yards around. But you can have them any size you like that work for your wrapping. If you like them a little bit smaller, maybe you have some shorter arms and it's harder to do, say, a 2-yard skein, make it a little smaller. So for around $2, Steve made this. Okay? So I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration, and I will probably re-record this also, or record a separate section, close-up view, like I do my normal tutorials. So I will just give you a quick demonstration here, and then I will include an additional tutorial after this part, after I go through all the calculations and everything that you can use to really understand how to use a knitty knotty. Because if you've never used it, if you've never used a knitty knotty before, maybe you have no idea how they work. So the idea is to wrap around all 4 of these corners. You've got it perpendicular to one another. You've got one going this way and one going this way. So the idea is to wrap around each and every one of these ends without crossing. Okay? So what I do is I start at one edge and then just go to the next edge and go to one side. So you start here and then you go down to the other side, and then you come back to the other side from where you started, and then to the other side from the other end. I don't know. I'm not explaining this well because I'm not sure how it's explained, but you just go from this end to that end, back to this end to that end. And when you have it in your hand and you're actually doing it, it will make more sense. And then you just keep following that same path until you have wound all of your yarn from your bobbin or from wherever you're pulling it from. And having a knitty knotty, even if you're not going to recycle yarn from the thrift store, or if you're not a spinner, it's nice because if you do knit something and then decide to rip it out, it's a great easy way to get your yarn back in a skein so that you can soak it and get it prepared and ready to reuse. Because I am in the mind that once I knit it, if I have to rip it out and reknit it, I like to give it a good soak before I knit it again. That is just my opinion. It is not completely necessary, but that is what I like to do. So here we are. I am just finishing, just going to wind a little bit more so that I can show you how to calculate. And you don't have to end on the same place that you started. I'm going to end mine on the same place that I started, but you don't have to. It's whenever your yarn runs out, and then you can tie it off. So I like to use crochet cotton to tie off my skeins. And I will use anywhere from 2 to 4 pieces to tie off my skein. It just depends on how big it is. For something this tiny, 2 is more than enough. And I will also tie off my ends. I'll tie my ends together so that they're tucked in. In fact, this is one good reason to have your ends end at the same spot, so then you can just tie them, which is what I just did. Otherwise, you have to kind of tie them into your skein. And again, I will do a close-up view, so stay tuned for the end of this video to see a close-up view of how this is all tied off. So I now have it all tied off, and I just used 2 because this is a small little skein. I have it all tied off. I just tied it two places in a kind of a figure 8. I didn't really do well, I guess I did do a figure 8. And then you're just going to slip it off of your Knitty Knotty. And then you have this. Okay. Now, like I said, this is just a small little skein just so that you can see how it works. So, but it's the same concept no matter how big or how small your Knitty Knotty or how much yarn you are adding up. So from here, what you're going to do is you're going to take a measuring tape. And I like to take a stiff measuring tape like this. Now, we all have little tape measures that we have in our notions bag, but it's kind of hard because those are, a lot of times those cloth type tape measures will stretch over time, which is a good reason why you should get new tape measures every once in a while. But I like to use this because it's stiff and I can keep it open so that I know exactly where I am. And it's easy for me to kind of hold up and measure. So what you're going to do is you're going to hold your skein up and you're going to measure from the inside at the top to the inside of the bottom. And the reason that I measure from the inside is because that's going to be the least distance. If you measure from the top to the bottom on the outside, then you may be calculating a little bit more yardage than what you actually have. And to me, I'd rather err on the side of less yardage and not try and do a project that has more yardage than to have a little left over. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to hold the bottom of the top of the tape measure at the bottom of the loop and measure down. And you're not going to pull on it or anything. You're just going to let it gently hang loose because this will give you a more accurate measurement. Again, measuring on the error of caution for less yardage than more. And you're just going to figure out, okay, approximately where does it land? Now mine hits at about 15 inches. So I know that one side of my skein here is 15 inches. So two sides is 30 inches. So I know that this skein is about 30 inches in circumference. So now what I do with that is I count how many rotations I have here, and to do that all you're going to do is count each thread one time. So you'll go through and you'll count all of your threads on the loop. How many times around the loop did you have? Now, if you don't have an even end where this one ended where I could tie it off to end, what if you have one end on this side and one end on this side? Don't worry too much about it because it's not going to be that much yardage difference. At most, it'll be one loop that is different. So you're just going to count off the number of loops around. So in this skein, this little skein, there are 26 loops. And if I count 26 loops by 30 inches, because we've already figured out that the total circumference is 30 inches, that gives me 780 inches. And then you divide that by 36, because that's how much a yard is, then you will have 21 yards, a little over 21 and a half yards in this little skein. And it works the same way for metric as well. You do the same measurement, except you would measure in centimeters and meters, and you do it exactly the same way. You count your loops, you calculate your circumference of your skein, and you count your, well, these are, I guess, your loops. You count your circumference of your skein and the number of threads in one side, in just one section of your skein. And it's that easy. It's not rocket science, but the first time you do it, it's a little confusing. So I'm hoping that this little quick tutorial helped you to determine how you can calculate yardage if you are a spinner, or if you are if you are a type of person who likes to recycle yarn. An easy way to count your yardage. And stay tuned for that closer up demonstration on how to use a Knitty Knotty. I think it's pretty self-explanatory if you go from end to end, and you can go from this end to this end, or you can go from this end to this end. It doesn't matter as long as you're going from this end to this end and then going to the opposite side and then the opposite side. Just make sure that you're not going from this end to this end and from this end back to this end before you go to this end. That's the only thing. But the first round is pretty easy because you know which ones you haven't gone to, and then you're going back to the same one again. You just want to make sure you go in the same direction too. You don't want to go around this edge to this edge and then back and around and then come up the other side. You just want to make sure you stay going in the same direction. So there you have it. Thanks so much for watching. Bye. I hope you will be able to see this. I wanted to give you a closer view of how to use the Knitty Knotty, but I hope it's not too close of a view. So you have your Knitty Knotty, and your Knitty Knotty is a long piece in the center and then two pieces on the outside. But here I have the two pieces on the outside parallel to one another, but what we want is we want them perpendicular to one another. So you must turn them so that they are perpendicular to one another, such as that. Now this particular Knitting Knotty has one edge that is different than the other edges, because the reason for that is so that you can easily slip your yarn off when you're done. But I will get to that in a moment. So I'm going to show you how to wrap this. Now, one suggestion that I can give you is if you have difficulty remembering which leg or arm you want to go to after each one, you could just number the ends of your Knitty Knotty. So if we're starting at the top, you could number this number 1, and then this number 2, and then number 3 over here, and then number 4, so that you know you have to go to each one of them in order. You also want to make sure you go around the same way every time. So I'm just going to give you a brief demonstration on how this works, and I'm hoping that I can get it all in camera so you can see it. So what I'll do is I'll start at one edge and I will wrap it, the yarn around a couple of times just to kind of get it stable there so it's not going to move. And then I naturally go to the arm that is kind of on the upper right after I go here. That's just how I do it. You can go here and then around here. It just depends on how you like to wrap. You just want to make sure that you are wrapping. You don't want to go this way and then come come back, because you have to go from this edge from here to here, and then to here and here. So you don't want to wrap the wrong way and then be crossing over. So for instance, you don't want to come here and then have to be coming back around this way. You don't want to cross over that center. You want to always keep the yarn away from the center and never cross here either. So you're going to take it around this edge, and then you're going to come up to this edge. So now we are around 2 edges. We're around both of these edges and one of that. And then you're going to come down here and wrap around this. And again, you don't want to come around the front, because then you're going to have to come back and cross. You do not want to cross. You see how there's cross there? Right here. Let me see if I can. You don't want this. Okay? So we need to come around the bottom side, and then we will come back across the top. So when you look at this, you have no crosses across the center here, and if you turn it this way, there's no crosses. So you have to be able to turn it each way and see that there's nothing that's crossed. Now I'm going to take this off again, just so I can show you what it would look like if it was crossed a couple of times. So if you get anything that looks like this, where it's crossing across the top here, or this where it's crossing like this, then that's wrong. Okay, so let's go back and do it the correct way. So we're going to go here, here. And once you have done a Knitty Knotty a few times, you will get the hang of it. It's really a natural movement. And then you're just going to continue and follow the string as you go. Now, once I get my string going and I don't have to hold this end here any longer, I will put my hand down in the center to make it easier to maneuver. And I'm just following the yarn around. Once you get that first round done, you just follow the yarn around. And if you accidentally cross over and you have something that looks like that, if you go the wrong way, make sure that you have nothing crossing. I don't know. Yeah, there you go. You do not want to have anything crossing like that. So you need to take that out. And sometimes you might make a mistake and you might have to take a couple of loops out, but if you don't do it now, you will be very disappointed when you go to wind your skein. So you just keep winding until all of your yarn is wound and you're ready to tie it off. So I'm going to go ahead and stop mine here because I am at the end. Well, I can keep going. It's just I have a ball here, but I'm at the same end where I have my loop. So I'm going to, or my other end. So I'm just going to unwind this a little bit till it's loose, and then I can tie it with this end piece. I'm pretending that I'm at the end with my yarn at this end as well. And I'm just going to tie it off. It'll make it easier when I'm trying to tie off my yarn. So now that you have it on your Knitty Knotty, again you want to verify, make sure that you have nothing, no crosses on this side, or when you look at it on this side, there's nothing crossing. You want to look at all sides because you might have a cross on one side and not the other. So check here, make sure there's nothing crossed here, there's nothing crossed here. You want to look at all the edges just to double check, because like I said, if you don't take the time now, when you go to wind your skein, you will be highly disappointed. So now I'm going to show you how to tie the skein off. Now this is a tiny little skein, but it's the same concept as doing a larger skein. What you're going to do is you're going to separate your skein into 3 parts, okay? Try and get them as equal as possible. It doesn't have to be precise. It's just to keep your skein somewhat together so that when you do wind it up and make it into a little something like this, it won't get all tangled. So you're going to just kind of divide it in approximately 3s, and then you're going to take your cotton and you're going to come under the first one, under the outside one, over the middle one, and under the other outside one, the second one. And then you're going to take your end and you're going to do the opposite going back through. So you're going to go over the outside, under the inside, and over the outside. And so now you have a figure 8 that you can tie off. And I'm going to show you that again. So I have another piece here, and this is just crochet cotton. You're going to divide it in 3, and then you're going to take your crochet cotton and go under, over, and under, and then over, under, and over, and then tie it off. And once you have tied off, I recommend at least 2 of the figure 8 ties. On a larger skein, I would do 4. I would also do it on these 2 edges as well. But since this is a tiny little skein, I think 2 is plenty. And then again, like I showed you before, you have this one edge where you can simply slide it off easily so that you're not breaking your knitty knotty. And then you have your skein, and then you can wind it up into a skeinlet by just twisting it. And again, all you're going to do is you're going to hold it. It's hard to show you because it's not quite in frame, but you're going to hold it on either end with your fingers and twist in opposite directions. And then once you think you've got enough twist in it, then you're going to bring those ends together and kind of pull one through the other. Like that. You're just going to pull one through the other and then kind of twist it back on itself to make a little skein. And that's all there is to using a knitty knotty for your hand spun, or if you're recycling your yarn.